All right, as I told you before, when we had various quotes and things, that Mr. Baldwin will be here, and simply what we'll do is have a straight question and answer period, Q&A, and I'll try to repeat the question as much as possible so that in case any people can't hear it, and we'll just get to it. So I'll just try to moderate and point out and get some people, whoever wants to ask a question. Okay, let's get to it. What do you want to say? Okay. All right, somebody down front here. Let's hear what you have to say. Let's get another mic. Hold on. I already gave them a lot about your background, all the stuff, so we can cut all the window dressing out. All right, question. Go ahead. First question. So the question comes as how is it to be American in a foreign country? That's essentially what it is.
Well, I think you're referring to something I said a long time ago when I said that I became an American for the first time when I stepped off the boat in France when I was 24, yeah. Well, when I got to France, I discovered that I wasn't anything else. I wasn't French, I wasn't African. I'd been born, in fact, in Harlem, and whether I liked it or not, I was an American. And being an American abroad, being a black American abroad in those years, it's not quite the same now, was very bewildering. Very bewildering because the Europeans assumed a relationship to my country, which in fact I didn't have. You know, Europe knows very little about America until today. And people know almost nothing at all about the black American, which is simply a source of confusion in the European mind. You know, Americans are by definition white. A black American is a contradiction in terms, you know. And to make them understand this, and to make yourself understand it, is part of what I was talking about.
Now, can I ask you the last one? You know that.
We'll just take one follow-up, sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take another question. Next question. Okay, right back here. Okay, okay. The question is he familiar with the rising suicide rate among the youngsters here in this country, the blacks in particular, and what are his views on that? I'm repeating the questions for the benefit of our tape here.
I'm aware of that, of the rising suicide rate. What my views are on it, well, it isn't. I'm not sure my views are very relevant. But it isn't very hard to see why there would be a rising suicide rate among young black people. The question is how to arrest it, and how to arrest it is by creating some kind of creating a situation in which there is some hope. What you're asking me is, in effect, you know, you're asking me what are my views on our situation and the latest manifestation of our trouble. We've always had to deal with this trouble, you know. I can't answer, you know, at this moment how to do this, but since we see it happening around us, we know something has to be done. The trouble is we cannot expect any help from most of our co-citizens or any help from the government unless we can blackmail the government. You see what I mean? It's a matter of jobs. You know, it's a matter of whether or not you have a future. And if a person thinks he has no future, he very often cuts his throat. The same thing. It's the same thing behind the phenomenon of drugs. People become junkies because they're hopeless. And it is not, this afternoon that we can arrive at a solution to that. But I think it's something that everyone has to work with. Because I got younger brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews too. And I'm scared to death about it. And I don't quite know what to do. That's the only honest answer I can give you.
Okay, there's a hand over here. Want to know why this forum was so poorly publicized? Mr. Baldwin will yield that to me. Frankly, I did not have the responsibility for publicizing, but I don't think it was so very so poorly publicized. At least there was a very big poster on my window in the office down there on San Pablo Avenue, at least. And there were a few other things. A lot of people, I don't think it was so poorly, to answer your question, I don't think it was so poorly publicized. Next question, over here.
How can we get there from here?
How can we get to... Okay, how can we build a non-racist society in this country?
This is going to be a rough afternoon.
Amen.
Well, I'll make an attempt. The racist society we're speaking of, is tied to the economic system. There's simply no way around that, And racism is a product, a direct product, a willed product, and a desired product of that economic system. Now, we obviously are not going to be able to dismantle the economic system this afternoon, but I think it's just as well to look at it as clearly as possible, because racism in this society has its own rewards. Mm-hmm. A white person in this society who really tries to visit those in prison, who really does not believe in all the bullshit we've been taught all these years, is at once, in fact, treated just like a nigger. He has become déclassé. He is worse than a nigger in a way because he should know better. Now, the only thing we can do about that right now is to live the lives we think we should and try and aim it and work toward the world we think we want to have. And take whatever, and pay whatever you have to pay behind it. There's nothing else there's no formula, and we won't get there, we won't get there from here tomorrow.
Oh, okay, let's take a question from this side of the room. Is there anyone? Okay, fine, right here. Okay, let me repeat the question. He said that, how do you feel about Pan-Africanism for blacks instead of trying to look at the society as becoming a non-racist society?
Well, frankly, I don't think there's a contradiction in that, at all. I think that what you have to do, or what we have to do, and what she's talking about, come out finally to be the same thing. At some level, at some point, we are fated to meet, Because the Pan-African society you're talking about, I agree with that. With this reservation, that we can go to Africa, and we can do anything we want to do, really. But we cannot go back to Africa. And I point that out because if you think you're going back to Africa, then you are likely to be disappointed. If you see what I mean.
Okay.
Well, because you in fact were not born in Africa, You in fact are not a part of that society. This is only a matter. I'm only pointing this out as a matter of fact. It's not an objection. But so that if you come to Africa from Detroit, let us say,
Well, very good. Right on.
But if you know that, then you are equipped to deal with what you'll find. That's what I'm saying.
If I may interject something, I should say that when I was in Africa, I was very surprised to find out that I was referred to as white man.
Yes, it's full of surprises.
Damn, I better get a paint job.
But it's very exciting too. I mean, I'm with you.
Okay, let's see another question way in back. Yes? Question is, what young Americans what young American writers are helping to carry on your own point of view, and how are you trying to shape them now?
Well,
Or how's trying to shape something?
Yes.
Well, yeah. How are your own ideas changing young Americans?
That's a slightly difficult question. First of all, it's hard for me to name younger writers, even a little bit dangerous, because then you obviously you leave somebody out. So I'll only say that about half a dozen, very young people who mean a great deal to me, and I think who will mean in the future a great deal to this country and to the world. And as it's very difficult for me to tell you precisely how they affect me, except that I depend on them. And I learn a great deal from them. I learn something about the world in which they live, which is also the world in which I live, but I'm much older. So the world of a man of 25 is not exactly closed to me, but it's not the world in which I operate. I'm not 25. But I can learn, but I know a great many people who are 25. And I got an enormous family who, of all ages, which prevents me from they don't allow me to become stagnant. So all I can tell you is I'm trying to keep abreast, and I'm very grateful to the people who are my comrades, who are younger than I.
Okay, Brian, right here.
I've always used black dialect as a shield, and a very effective shield against prejudice. However, a first grader or a second grader is in public school, the first thing that's taught is that he's not speaking the right kind of English. In other words, the teacher then can speak standard English, and the child really isn't given this shield, this defense, this black dialect against prejudice. He doesn't want to let it go. From what I have observed in the school system, it seems to be a problem.
So your question is black dye the shield? All right. Okay, the question is black dye the shield, or is it not a shield, and how does Mr. Baldwin view it with respect to reading, sort of thing?
Well, the word dialect threw me a little bit, because I didn't quite know what you meant. You're talking about Negro, you're talking about black speech, Negro speech.
Good.
Oh yes, I know. I understand what you mean now.
Bad. Let's get on with it.
No, I know what you mean now, and it's it's a technique. It's a technique of survival, and it comes out of the fact that, comes out of the truth, which is that at one point in our history, I had to warn him about something while you were listening, and he had to understand it, and you not understand it. That's. No, but that's true. That's exactly the root of black language. Well, you see. I know. Then you got a collision. But I tell you what, I think, in my view, what I've seen, and I've worked a little bit in the public schools, and I got family in the public schools. It's more subtle than that. It is indeed a collision, but beneath the apparent problem, which is real, there is also almost always, on the part of the teacher, a contempt for the child's experience. And the child reacts to that, more than to the technical question of reading, or learning, standard English. I might add, by the way, that this is the most illiterate country in the world, and very few people are equipped to teach anybody anything. But if you see, in my experience, if the teacher can get through to the child, he or she can teach that child without menacing that child's way of life, without menacing that child's way of speaking. Because every black man in this country speaks two languages, Well, I beg your pardon? and has to, because we're surrounded by a hostile population. So the question is not that the kid will be divested of his tools by the teacher, but that the teacher can't teach him because she doesn't respect him. If she respects him, then the kid will respond to that respect, and then he can learn. But yeah, but it depends on the rapport the teacher establishes with the child,
Okay, I might add something to that. If you're really interested in pursuing that particular type of thing, there's a very excellent course in the Department of Afro-American Studies called Afro-American Linguistics. It's number 138. It's right here on this campus. I know it because I teach it, okay? Discussion. Yeah. I see no need for me to rephrase the question.
I'm not entirely sure I've understood. The first part of the question is about the dominance of the Anglo-Saxon language, right?
Yeah.
I'm saying Anglo-Saxon
English.
I'm saying that because the continent of Africa, the Caribbean, and the Black Americans, and the dark, they use dominant. I'm saying for the Afro-Saxon.
All right.
Afro-Saxon.
Afro-Saxon language. I see what you're saying. Well, I don't quite know. I'm not absolutely sure I've entirely understood the implications of your question, first of all, to be honest. And you asked me to what extent, you say the Afro-Saxon language, is that your phrase?
Not Anglo-Saxon,
Not Anglo-Saxon, Afro-Saxon. All right. To what extent does this language dominate the world, is your question, the first part of your question. And that is, well, I don't quite know how to answer it because I don't quite know what the question means. Obviously, what you call the Afro-Saxon language dominates a great part of the world, The implications of this domination are what I suppose your question is addressing itself to, and that I frankly cannot answer this afternoon. It's an enormous question. And the other that concerns my speech, you say I was nationalistic.
Nationalistic, yeah.
Well, I didn't intend to be nationalistic. I think I understand why you think that, and I suppose you're right, really. But I was addressing an American audience in an American context, and concerning things which I consider to be very urgent, happening at this moment in this country. But I was not or did not mean to be oblivious or to seem to be oblivious to the world outside this country. You understand what I'm trying to say? And
Middle part of it about the Afro-Americans, the Africans, and the
yes,
the myth with respect to
the myth you say that the Afro-Americans and Africans don't get together. Yeah, I don't. Well, I don't. When I was talking to my friend over yonder before about the difference between going to Africa and going back to Africa, I was not implying a division. I was just insisting on a kind of clarity. And when I myself was in Africa, I didn't feel at all. How can I put it? I didn't feel strange at all. I was very happy in Africa. I learned a great deal. I want to go back. In fact, I went to Africa prepared to be treated, as you put it, like a white man. And I was treated very differently. People told me what tribe I came from, or guessed what tribe I came from.
Yeah.
It really was as though, in contradiction to what I said before, but it really was as though for me, as though I had come home. Mm-hmm. And when I say I learned something, I can't put in words what it was I learned because it wasn't anything I could write down. It was something that happened inside me, out of the interaction, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point he's making. Even though I told you that people referred to me as white men over there, it was it was because of my speech, the way I had my clothes, etc., and the way I walked, that sort of thing. But at the same time, I had a very close affinity with many of the Africans. Once you get to understand the culture, know the people there, it was really a very big, beautiful thing, especially for any black person who goes to Africa. Somebody who had a hand was over here. Okay, way in the back.
In recent years, the incidence of rape seems to have increased to become more prevalent. And in addition, black on black crime has become more prevalent. With respect to Africa, and what has been referred to as third world countries, are these conditions prevalent or are they a product of society?
Okay, with respect to rape, black on black crime, and you know, with respect to Africa, are these conditions or products of the society? Is that what you're saying? Okay. By the way, we're just joined by Dr. Peters, who's been very, very instrumental in arranging the complete schedule of Mr. Baldwin while he's been here. And so I just want to welcome him to the up front here. Okay, go ahead.
First part of your question, the black on black crimes and rape, etc. I don't know how to put this. It seems to me very obvious that, first of all, I'm afraid it's going to get worse before it gets better. And it is obviously the product of this society. This society is not only undergoing a crisis, but is coming apart at the seams. And when the social fabric begins to give, chaos is one of the results. And nobody in the society escapes that. It's tragic, but this society this is a very dishonest society, and it cannot produce a certain kind of monster, and it will for a while. You know, this is where you and I, all of us, come in. We have to try to deal with that, but there's no point deluding ourselves about it. As for third world countries, it is my impression that they have other things to do, and have a more coherent need for each other. You know, it is our need for each other precisely which is menaced here, and makes everyone distrust everybody else here. It makes it so difficult for anything to be done or for anyone to love each other. That's why you get rape, black on black crimes, and etc. All of that. No one in this country, no one in this society trusts anybody else. The world that is coming, you know, that we see beginning to come in what we call the third world countries, it's too soon for me to, you know, to make any guesses about it. But what I have seen of it, you know, demands of the people in it a mutual respect, and since they have a common goal, which is something they can work toward, which is their necessity, really. They have no choice but to work toward their liberation. The society functions on another level, and I would hazard, well, in my experience, I know that the crimes you speak of more and are very uncommon.
Okay, question over here. Okay, lady.
I'm not sure.
No, I'm not sure either. You're saying that does the American Negro have is there a university or a particular place where he has a permanent place in it? Oh, damn, I still didn't get it. Did you?
I didn't get it either.
Would you just mind just say it in 2 or 3 words? A permanent place or of achievement with respect to they can. Okay, well, let's look at it in permanency and not in achievement.
Well, are you referring?
Yeah. Okay. Just essentially, as much as I can see from it, is there particular places or universities, or is there a particular thing like as an American citizen you can vote, or how do you look at it yourself as somebody of importance here in the United States?
I don't know. No, I'm very sorry, but I didn't
completely get it myself.
I didn't understand the question, so the best thing to do is to say I didn't understand the question.
Okay, we don't understand. Next question. I'll get to you personally. Okay, the question, would you like to have a statement from Mr. Baldwin with respect to homosexuality that there, among blacks, homosexuality among blacks?
I don't. Okay, but what is this to do with the black scholar? What is this to do with Egypt?
With Egypt?
No, I'm not trying to be funny. You know. All right. I see. Well, I got very little to say about that because homosexuality among blacks doesn't differ from homosexuality among other people. There is a kind of, and when I asked you about Egypt, this is what I wanted to find out. There is a kind of, there is a very definite hostility against homosexuality among certain black people. There's a certain image of masculinity, which the idea of homosexuality seems to attack. I think that's nonsense myself. You know, people are going to be, have always been as various as people are, and no one makes himself, you know, and no one can foresee who he or she is going to fall in love with, and ain't nobody's business but the person.
That's right.
You know.
Amen. Amen. Lady over here. Okay, what are the important things that a black person, a black parent in particular, should have in responding to their children? Okay.
Well, it's
Save the children here.
Well, but it's such an individual question. First of all, well, you're dealing with a child. You're dealing with a miracle, and you're responsible for it. You know, and first of all, you have to give that child yourself. You know, and the truth. And you have to trust the child. It's a very delicate. I never. Well, it's not true to say I haven't raised any children. I've been around children all my life. You know, from the time from the cradle until the time they went to school. And so I know, you know, what. It's the most delicate and strenuous endeavor in the world. It's much harder than writing a book. You know, but it's not an endeavor where anyone can advise you, in a sense, because every child is different. You know. And it's changing all of the time, you know, from one second to the next. The child is always discovering something, you know, and every discovery changes him. And some of the discoveries are dangerous, some of the discoveries are beautiful, you know. All of the discoveries, you know, from the point of view of the parent, are a little frightening. But you have to trust it. You have to trust the child, and you have to trust yourself with the child. And you cannot be too rigid about it, because the child is going to grow up into a world which you cannot imagine. All you can do is prepare him for the world in which he will live. But you will not be able to dictate the terms of that world. Because he has at a moment in his life, he's going to learn more from his peers than he can learn from you. If you see what I mean. So that everything depends on what you do with him the first 7 years. Does that make sense to you? But I can't be more specific than that. Yes, I understand what you're saying. Well, we face this problem for generations. I would add, though, that unlike when I was a child, prepare the child for life in America was the only question, you know, because no other part of the world existed. And unlike, you know, when I was a child, there was no Africa even to be discussed. And when I was a child, all I knew was that I was I come from slaves. And that was it. There's never been any clockmakers or any poets or any writers or any maybe a couple of boxers, but nothing else produced by black people. Now that's a terrible way to grow up. Your child does not have that handicap, and it isn't only life in America you got to prepare him for, but you know, by the time he's 20, this century ends, and America will be much less important. It will no longer be the center of the world when this century comes to an end. You've got to prepare the child for a world that is coming much, much larger than the world in which he was born. You see what I mean?
I want to know why did he have to leave America? And what did he discover when he was in France as respect to the tone of America?
I left America in 1948, and it's not exactly true to say I left in order to write. I left in order to stay alive. I knew that my life on the New York streets, in the hands of the cops and all the other hazards, was soon come to an end. You know, somebody would call me nigger once too often. Something, you know, it was inevitable. Or I end up in jail. So I split. And largely because I'm the oldest of 9 children, and I felt responsible for them. And all I could do was write, and I could no longer do it in New York. So I went to Paris, where I did finish my first book. And in Paris I did learn, as I said before, in a kind of silence, because I didn't speak any French. I knew very few people. I lived in a kind of silence in which I was able to hear, for the first time really, where I really came from, and what what I really sounded like, what my father really sounded like. And I got it from the music, if you see what I mean. The cadence of black speech, and how I myself must have sounded when I was 4 or 5 years old. I was able to make a certain journey back into myself and into my past, and make a certain kind of reconciliation with myself and my past. And then I was able to grow up. If that answers you. Mm-hmm. I would have been killed.
The question was, what do you think would have happened if you had you not left?
Well, I once asked my brother that, and he answered me very, very succinctly. He said, "You'd be dead." You know, and it's true. If I had not left, I would be dead. I'm not being romantic about that.
You'd recall some of the quotes that I read earlier when one of his agent told him to burn the book.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, so this is some idea. Okay, over here, fan.
I mean that, though.
Okay. Well, just please try to confine as much as possible. Go ahead. Good. Very interesting. Four. Last one, please. Okay. Okay, essentially what you're looking at is literature, how do people look at literature, black literature in Africa, then it has to do with black labels, such as Afro-American, Black, Afro-Am, that sort of stuff. Thirdly, has to do with what? With Du Bois, yeah, with Du Bois, and lastly, what was the last one? Rights on becoming black. You have the choice of four there to respond to. Which one would you like to do? Okay, chose to die in Ghana. So you want to let him respond to one of those. Which one would you like to?
Well, it's a package, isn't it?
A package. It is a package. It's a nice package.
It's a nice package, though. But I don't know how to begin it. Let me get into the end.
The end. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. I agree. I agree with Du Bois. Almost entirely. He was a very great, very great scholar, a very great man. It depends. I must add to that in the time in which we live, everything depends on how you interpret what you mean by the word revolution. Because we cannot have an armed insurrection in this country at this moment. I'm just trying to be realistic. They got the guns, so we had to do it another way.
Yeah.
But that's all right because it will be done. As for the, I think you asked me about the reception of black American writers abroad, right, or specifically in Africa.
Europe, wasn't it? You said black literature in Europe. Is that what you were? Abroad in general. Okay.
Well, black literature abroad, is not very well known. Not very well known. It's beginning to be better known. I'm thinking now of English African writers and French African writers and some from the Caribbean, and some Americans, of course. It's only beginning to be known because it's just as Africa is only beginning to be known, just as the black experience is only beginning now to be known, if you see what I mean. And you had one other question about what advice, yes, about labels. Well, I must admit that the question of what black people in America should be called is not, is not very urgent in my mind. At the moment we seem to be more or less reconciled to being Afro-Americans, which is perfectly all right with me. It seems to more or less suggest the truth about our situation and our identity, and even something about our potential. And as for the advice I might be able to give to a young literary
Genius.
to a young literary genius, let me tell you one thing. Young literary geniuses don't take anybody's advice.
Okay, let's go way over here. Question. You. Yeah.
Black what?
A black what? What's stand a black what? She'd like to, Mr. Baldwin, to comment on public education in America, especially with respect to blacks, and especially why on this university the black enrollment very low. I don't know if he can really respond to that or not, but just go ahead.
I'll do my best. I'll begin with the public school situation, which I know more about. And it's a very difficult question to answer too. It's a difficult answer because first of all, you can't begin to answer without feeling terribly futile. And look, the truth is, it's very hard to talk about education in this country without talking about the whole society in which it mainly fails to occur. You can hardly talk about schools, without talking about cities. And the cities are in the hands of financiers. The cities in the hands of pirates, thugs. And our children, therefore, are victims of this, are victims of the principles according to which the country is run. The country is not run according to the, either the will of its citizens, I hope, or the good of its citizens, I know that, but for profit, for money, to make money. And education is a billion-dollar industry. And the least important part of that industry is the child. I think this is a criminal, but this is the way it works. Now, the public education in the city in which I grew up, is enough to break the heart, enough to make you want to kill. And when we have tried, and we're trying again, and we've tried over and over and over again, to educate our children ourselves, to be responsible for the teaching, the curriculum, for the books. We did that for 3 years in New York some years ago, and the experiment succeeded for 3 years. And because it succeeded, it was crashed, it was smashed by the Board of Education, the Teachers Union, and Albany. So that is what you're up against. Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. That's what one's up against. As for enrollment at this college, let's face it, black people in this country have a terrible time just getting through 24 hours a day. It's absolutely true, And education, it's hard to talk about education in a country in which literacy is adored. It's hard to talk about education in a country where people take seriously such a creature as John Wayne and Ronald Reagan. It is. I'm not trying to be funny. It's true, And for a black person to get an education in this country, he's got to have a lot of guts, first of all, and to endure. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but this institution is like many other institutions, and which means it's a racist institution.
Amen.
There's no way around that. All the American institutions are racist. And to get an education under those circumstances is a tremendous act of the will. And also you risk schizophrenia. But I'm not saying this because I think black people should not be educated, but I am saying that black people very largely educate themselves. What you have to do is pick up the tools and with your own intention. You know, that's the trick.
Okay, I'll take a question. Before that, I'd like to mention one thing is that it's a very good thing that you're bringing up this question about low enrollment of black students. In fact, I think the fact that Mr. Baldwin's been here for a long time here at the university, roughly the past 4 or 5 years, we've been trying to get together a Black Scholars Conference, and I think that James Baldwin's appearance here is as a Regent's lectureship that is going to help to be more or less the catalyst for bringing that sort of thing about. And many of us can get together and think, and look, it's not just for the University of California, it's for many of the other institutions around here, but of course the University of California is the biggie, and we should set the pace on a lot of things. And so I hope that something like this will be forthcoming if we do get some sort of a conference that will be materialized. Okay, a question right over here. Gentlemen, it's been antsy for a while.
No, I don't. No, I've not read it and I've not seen it.
Is that your question?
No, I'm not.
You want to know if he was familiar with the play For Colored Girls Only by Mr. Saki. He said he was not. Okay. Okay, questions. Thank you. Come on, bring it on. 2 questions, okay.
The what factor?
The what and why.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
I see no need to repeat the question.
The what and why factors. Well, the what and why factor is always a little difficult to, to isolate. And well, how can I put it? I began to write around the time I started to read, and I was fascinated by people and all that. I used to do, Christmas pageants for the church, and I wrote school song, which my poor brothers had to sing for years. But that I never thought of that as it didn't occur to me I was going to be a writer. I began to be a writer in my own mind, really, and this has a lot to do with my father. Largely because of my father, I entered the pulpit when I was 14. Largely because of my father, but not only because of my father. And I was in the pulpit for 3 years. Now, a great many things happened to me in that 3 years in the pulpit. And one of them was being exposed in a way I never had been before. And of course, I was an adolescent. It's also involved with puberty. Seeing for the first time, the brothers and the sisters of the church, and really seeing the lives they led, and the role, the church played in their lives, and the role that I, as a young minister, played in their lives too. And it was kind of overwhelming, to be exposed to so much misery, so much love, so much faith, so much terror, so much pain, day in and day out, week in and week out, for for those 3 years. And I eventually my father and I thought about it, but I eventually felt that I had no right to stay in the pulpit. That I was doing something wrong. That I couldn't bring them what they needed. And I no longer believed as I had believed when I was 14. And so I left. But I know that if it had not been for that, I might not have become a writer. And the maturation process you talk about as concerns my father. My father died when I was 19, and he died, that is, before we could become reconciled. And that pain is the root of Go Tell It on the Mountain, which it took me 10 years to write. But in that 10 years, insofar as anyone ever grows up, you know, in that 10 years, from 17 to 27, by the time I finished novel when I was 27, and then I began to grow up. Because I knew who my father was, and, you know.
Very nice. Right here. Go ahead. Yes, you. Yes, yes, stand up, please.
Mr. Baldwin, the term nigger, what I'd like to know from you, you know, we use it with brothers and some of our sisters, but niggas, you know, as niggas got on the shop jacket or whatever. I'd like to know from you your definition of the term and why you use it for.
Okay, question was the term nigger. Why does he use his definition of the term, and why does he use it so often?
Well, it's a term, I know that it's a very controversial term, in fact, but I use it in many ways, you know. It's a word, it's if you'll excuse the expression, the word is a little like motherfucker, you know, which...
Did you say motherfucker or motherfucker? Anyway, go ahead.
It's a word which can, depending on who is saying it and to whom, you know, can mean almost anything.
Very
It can cause a fight. It can lead to a wedding, you know.
Especially if she says, "You're my nigga."
Does that answer your question? My definition? Well, obviously the word, you know, comes, it's, what does the word come from? The root is a Spanish word for black, you know. But the way, what niggas have done with the word, or what we have done with the word, has very little to do with that. If you see what I mean. The gut feeling? Well, look, so obviously the world is full of people who better not call me nigger. You know, from my baby brother, you know. Well, my baby brother's the only man in the world I'm scared of, because he's bigger than I am now, and he remembers when he was smaller. You know? And if David's mad at me, he called me nigger one way, and when he's not mad at me, it's something else, you know. And it's one of, I'm not sure I can define it, but it's one of the, it's part of a system of telegraph signals, you know. It's, Beg pardon? Well, I always thought it was, it comes from the word Negro, which is the Spanish word for black, and then we, you know.
Okay.
You might be right.
Anyway,
does that answer you at all?
I think it's a good point. One thing that, especially he mentioned about it being a filler, this is a lot, you'll find a lot of it in the black culture, especially with this whole thing of black English, black speech, where people will use the word nigger and other words as fillers, not necessarily directed at a particular individual or thing, but as a kind of a filler. I think it's very good. And the young lady down here said it came from Africa. It's a very good possibility.
Yeah, it's a good possibility, too.
There's a word in some African languages, that's ninga, which whenever it came over here and converged with English, there's a good possibility of it being nigger. Okay, right here.
On Thursday night, we were on the public television network, and you were asked a question by one of the local news correspondents in terms of has things got better in terms of how you saw it as a black person. You responded that you were 50 years old and you're still waiting. And what happened to that person who is 12 or 22? How long must they wait? And I asked you the same question. Could we get some of your political views? You are a worldly man. We understand your literary accomplishments. We all have our own personal kinds of social mores that we can delve into all day long. But some of us came to hear your political views because that's what you think that you are about, being one of the last of the Black Renaissance. That we know that there was something more than just literary that was going on. Your participation in the civil rights movement, the fact that you referred to Marx and Malcolm and your brothers and how they
Okay, can you hear some more of the political views? I think it's very good. I'll just let Mr. Baldwin go ahead as to whatever he wants to do on that.
Well, you know, first of all, let me say, you know, that I don't consider myself a leader. I don't consider myself to be a spokesman. I don't consider, you know, that, I don't consider that, well, how can I put this? My political views, yes, I have very strong political views. I don't know that, since let me try to be clear about this. What I'm trying to say is I don't have a social or a political blueprint. I'm not equipped to lead a revolution. I'm equipped perhaps to make you think, or to, you know. But the reason that, what? Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, first of all, let's try to, okay, we'll take you, I beg your pardon? Well, I see, so we have a big hodgepodge of a lot of things.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, you asked me an enormous question, but let's, first I'll be general and we'll try to be precise. For example, I concluded a long time ago, as I said before, we can't really talk about anything until we talk about the economic system. And I concluded a long time ago that this economic system, for many reasons, you know, is doomed. And frankly, you know, it can't end a moment too soon. It is, you know, it's caused fantastic grief and waste and does until today. And all of the things that the lady over there was talking about, like affirmative action or equal opportunity and all of those things, are menaced and by the stranglehold of this system. What I'm trying to say is whatever we are talking about, we have to bear in mind that whether that is what we're up against, that is what has to be in one way or another defeated, outwitted, overthrown finally, or it will, you know, it will fall of its own weight. But we are always in that shadow, you know. And our intentions, which are really essentially, after all, to save our children, is not the intention of this republic. It was never intended, after all, let us tell the truth about it, it was never intended that we should be free here, and it was never intended that we should be able to talk to each other as we are doing now. It was not a part of the will of the American Republic. Now, one's politics has to be based, has to come from that. And the reason it's difficult for me sometimes to discuss my political views is because it demands a vast amount of improvisation from day to day. For example, how in the world, you know, our president is against political prisoners, and he said that to the whole world, right? And he's for human rights. But we have thousands of political prisoners sitting in, you know, sitting in jail in this country right now. For example, Ben Chavez in Charlotte, North Carolina. And all of our effort until this hour has failed to get him released. You know what I mean? The question is then, how do we do that? And furthermore, behind Ben Chavez, there are thousands of boys sitting in the tombs right now who have absolutely no right to be there, no reason to be there. How do we get them out? And we know very well that you know, we can march and petition the mayor, the president, and we have done it for years and years and years. And it's not until there is some advantage they can gain from responding, it's only then that they respond. Now I will add this. I will add this. There's a responsibility, since we have we can expect such little help from most of our co-citizens, and none at all from the power structure, then we have to be, we're in an unprecedented situation which demands unprecedented means. So there being no historical precedent for our situation. Marx nor Lenin can help us here. European history does not help us here. History doesn't help. History doesn't give us any example of the people, the black people of this country, and the situation that we are in, and where we came from, and how we have endured. So we have to forge a new politics with a vast amount of cunning, and I might add, a vast amount of silence.
Amen.
Well, first I have to do a consistency of the day that you arrived. It's been an inspirational thing for me and my wife, and I'm sure everyone else. My question relates to a writer who's written in town, Michelle Baldwin, in her book. And the reason why I ask this question is simply because she's attacking, I believe, black men. And I like to know, is this an advantage to us as a people to have people of her ability to come out and put black men in a worse position than they already in? Or is it an advantage, raising an advantage for us? I haven't read it, but I've read the article because I really read it. The idea is that this is an advantage to us as black men to have this kind of attack. Well, we supposed to respond to this in a negative manner. How should we respond to this right response?
Okay, the question is, how would Mr. Baldwin, would he respond to, I think it's Cheryl Wallace?
Michelle Wallace.
Michelle Wallace, with the work that she's done at the Super Ego or something like that?
It's Black Macho and the Myth of the Black Superwoman.
Sort of thing.
Well, I've not read the book. Well, I'll make an attempt. The racist society we're speaking of, is tied to the economic system. There's simply no way around that, And racism is a product, a direct product, a willed product, and a desired product of that economic system. Now, we obviously are not going to be able to dismantle the economic system this afternoon, but I think it's just as well to look at it as clearly as possible, because racism in this society has its own rewards. A white person in this society who really tries to visit those in prison, who really does not believe in all the bullshit we've been taught all these years, is at once, in fact, treated just like a nigger. He has become déclassé. He is worse than a nigger in a way because he should know better. Now, the only thing we can do about that right now is to live the lives we think we should and try and aim it and work toward the world we think we want to have. And take whatever, pay whatever you have to pay behind it. There's nothing else there's no formula, and we won't get there, we won't get there from here tomorrow.
Oh, okay, let's take a question from this side of the room. Is there anyone? Okay, fine, right here. Okay, let me repeat the question. He said that, how do you feel about Pan-Africanism for blacks instead of trying to look at the society as becoming a non-racist society?
Well, frankly, no, I don't think there's a contradiction in that, at all. I think that what you have to do, or what we have to do, and what she's talking about, come out finally to be the same thing. To do this, but since we see it happening around us, we know something has to be done. The trouble is we cannot expect any help from most of our co-citizens or any help from the government unless we can blackmail the government. You see what I mean? It's a matter of jobs, you know, it's a matter, which is a matter of whether or not you have a future. And if a person thinks he has no future, he very often cuts his throat. The same thing, it's the same thing behind the phenomenon of drugs. People become junkies because they're hopeless. And it is not, you know, this afternoon that we can arrive at a solution to that. But I think it's something that everyone has to work with. You know, because I got younger brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews too. And I'm scared to death about it. And I don't quite know what to do. That's the only honest answer I can give you.
Okay, there's a hand over here. Want to know why this forum was so poorly publicized? Mr. Baldwin will yield that to me. Frankly, I did not have the responsibility for publicizing, but I don't think it was so very so poorly publicized. At least there was a very big poster on my window in the office down there on San Pablo Avenue, at least. And there were a few other things. A lot of people, I don't think it was so poorly, to answer your question, I don't think it was so poorly publicized. Next question, over here.
How can we get there from here?
How can we get to... Okay, how can we build a non-racist society in this country?
This is going to be a rough afternoon.
Amen. All right, as I told you before, when we had various quotes and things, that Mr. Baldwin will be here, and simply what we'll do is have a straight question and answer period, Q&A, and I'll try to repeat the question as much as possible so that in case any people can't hear it, and we'll just get to it. So I'll just try to moderate and point out and get some people, whoever wants to ask questions. Okay, let's get to it. Anything you want to say? Okay. All right, somebody down front here. Let's hear what you have to say. Let's get another mic. Hold on. I already gave them a lot about your background, all this stuff, so we can cut all the window dressing out. All right, question. Go ahead. First question.
Baldwin, my question is, as a foreigner, I'm very proud about you. I heard about you. And one thing I want to ask you, when you says about you know what you really are when how is to be American in a foreign country, what is your meaning?
So the question comes as how is it to be American in a foreign country? That's essentially what it is.
Well, I think you're referring to something I said a long time ago when I said that I became an American for the first time when I stepped off the boat in France. When I was 24, yeah. Well, when I got to France, I discovered that I wasn't anything else. I wasn't French, I wasn't African. I'd been born, in fact, in Harlem, and whether I liked it or not, I was an American. And being an American abroad, being a black American abroad in those years, it's not quite the same now, was very bewildering. Very bewildering because the Europeans assumed a relationship to my country, which in fact I didn't have. You know, Europe knows very little about America until today. At some level, at some point, we are fated to meet, you know, because the Pan-African society you're talking about, I agree with that, with this reservation, that we can go to Africa, you know, and we can do anything we want to do, really, but we cannot go back to Africa. And I point that out because if you think you're going back to Africa, then you are likely to be disappointed. You see what I mean? Okay. Well, because You, in fact, were not born in Africa. You know, you, in fact, are not, you, in fact, are not a part of that society. This is only a matter of, I'm only pointing this out as a matter of fact. It's not an objection. But, so if you know you come to Africa from Detroit, let us say, you
Well, very good, right on.
But if you know that, then you are equipped to deal with what you'll find. That's what I'm saying. You know.
If I may interject something, I should say that when I was in Africa, I was very surprised to find out that I was referred to as white man.
Yes, it's full of surprises.
Damn, I better get a paint job.
But it's very exciting, too. I mean, I'm with you.
Okay, let's see another question way in back. Yes? Question is, what young Americans what young American writers are helping to carry on your own point of view, and how are you trying to shape them now?
Well,
or how's trying to shape something?
That's it. Yes.
Oh. Yeah. How are your own ideas changing young Americans?
That's a slightly difficult question. First of all, it's hard for me to name younger writers, even a little bit dangerous, because then you obviously leave somebody out. So. And people know almost nothing at all about the black American, which is simply a source of confusion in the European mind. You know, Americans are by definition white. A black American is a contradiction in terms, you know. And to make them understand this, and to make yourself understand it, is part of what I was talking about.
Now, can I ask you the last one because I want that?
We'll just take one follow-up, sure.
One word of word. I am very proud the way you feel because I, as a foreigner, stated as in your country, when I came to America, that's the way I was once upon a time. That I am an African Sudanese Caribbean. Wherever I go, I am that person.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take another question. Next question. Okay, right back here. Okay, the question is he familiar with the rising suicide rate among the youngsters here in this country, the blacks in particular, and what are his views on that? I'm repeating the questions for the benefit of our tape here.
I'm aware of that, of the rising suicide rate. What my views are on it, well, it isn't, I'm not sure my views are very relevant, but it isn't very hard to see why there would be a rising suicide rate among young black people. The question is how to arrest it. And how to arrest it is by creating some kind of creating a situation in which there is some hope. What you're asking me is, in effect, you know, you're asking me what are my views on our situation and the latest manifestation of our trouble. We've always had to deal with this trouble, you know. I can't answer, you know, at this moment how